Her 9000's Game Room.
Now, when it comes to games, one of my favourite sayings of all time is, you can't polish a turd. Yes, it might be immature, but there's a plain straight message there, and it clearly states that if something is bad, it's bad no matter how much you try to clean it up and persuade people otherwise. I've used this phrase in the past when talking about countless number of games. I've basically claimed that the engine sucks, or that it's too broken, and that it's basically beyond help. Well, I was reading about the game I'm going to review today, and I found out a few interesting bits of information, and one of them really surprised me. The game I'm reviewing right now used the same engine as the Wayne's World video game. That should be enough to make me run in fear, to make me refuse to even try the game. After all, I did try Wayne's World when I was a kid, and it was one of the most awful things I had ever played. A real turd that I felt was without any real merit at all. Then again though, I also played this game, the one you're looking at right now as a kid, and I really enjoyed it, without even realising its connection to the evil one. I won't be reviewing Wayne's World anytime soon, basically because I'm fortunate enough not to own it, and there are a lot better games I'd rather dedicate my time to. However, I will give you a brief summary of its major issues here, as they'll help me in explaining what has been fixed in the game I'm reviewing. Wayne's World had annoying long levels with no real direction, where you wandered aimlessly hearing the same music repeat and repeat with annoying sound effects and enemies which seemed to hit you before you had realised exactly what they were and where they were. The controls also seemed a bit off. All in all, it was a terrible movie license with no redeeming qualities at all. In fact, it is one of the games you often hear being referred to as the worst on the system, if not the worst. Well, certainly you'd be hard pressed to say that it wasn't in the top 10 worst of the system's library. So the game I'm reviewing here, as you'll know having clicked on it, is b.o.b. b.o.b, or as it's known in Japan, Space Funky Bob. The game was developed by Grey Matter Inc., the creators of Wayne's World, and Foley High-Tech Systems. It was published by Electronic Arts and released on the Sega Mega Drive, or as Americans will know it, the Genesis, and the Super Nintendo. Obviously it's the SNES version I'm talking about, but they are actually of about equal quality. To be honest, I'd never heard of Foley High-Tech Systems, but reading up on them it's not surprising. They were only ever involved in 10 games, only 3 of which managed to make it to market. So a game by the makers of Wayne's World and a studio who started far more than they finished doesn't really sound like the best start, does it? Playing it now, I can see the connections to Wayne's World in the basics of the game, but they got so much right this time. First, the levels are much smaller, which would sound bad on one level because you'd think it would cut down playtime, but no, this is countered by the fact that there are a lot more of them. So we've swapped long boring levels you get lost in for lots of small, short, faster levels which give the game a totally different pace and feel. The story is as simple as can be. Bob, who can best be described as some sort of robotic Ant-Man, ruins his dad's car and crash lands on a planet covered in domes. He enters a dome and there are enemies in it, so he has to battle his way through them to try and find a new means of transport so he can get home on time. The graphics in the game might not be the best you'll see on the system, but they are full of detail. Bob himself is full of character. One of the best examples is when he moves along on an overhead pole. Literally as he moves you can see every one of his fingers move along the pole. You'll see him blink and swing. It gives you a nice cartoony feel. In fact, the entire game seems to do its best to try and feel like a cartoon, with the graphics and the sound effects. The music is unfortunately repetitive. It pretty much just consists of about 3 tracks. This is something it unfortunately shares with Wayne's World, but at least the sound effects are far less wretched. Another interesting bit of trivia about this game is that in 2008 the source code of the SNES version became available, as it was found on a hard drive that someone had purchased via eBay. So do I like b.o.b? Well, I think you can tell from the review I do rather enjoy the game. It's no masterpiece, but considering the game it shares its engine with, it's a surprisingly decent game. I'd give this game something around 6.5 out of 10. It's fun in short bursts, but it's not the sort of thing that sets the world alight. If you really want to try it, then I've seen copies of the cart go for around the £8 point, with the box copies being much higher. For anyone that owns a PSP, it's also worth noting that it is on the EA replay disc, alongside the SNES versions of Syndicate, Ultimate, Wing Commander and a bunch of Mega Drive games, so this might be a good way to sample a whole host of 16-bit games for a very reasonable price. Now, I find it important to note though that some people complain about this EA replay disc, as a few of the game's soundtracks have been altered due to copyright issues. Okay, that's Kerr9000 signing off saying keep on gaming.